my name is Steve Thomason, and I am the Associate Professor of Spiritual Formation and Discipleship, if you want the whole title. And I just started August 1st of 2022. So I just hit my 1-year anniversary at the time of this filming here in August of 23. Yay! And it's been a great year. So glad that I'm here. So my role is I have an interesting hybrid contract with Luther Seminary. So I am a full faculty member, associate professor. So half of my job is doing all the professorial things. I teach classes, I'm a member of the faculty, I do faculty committees, and I do all that fun stuff. And I have student advisees, so I'm an advisor and all that. But the other half of my contract is that I am a content creator for Faith Lead Academy. So this is a big plug for Faith Lead Academy. So Faith Lead is part of Luther Seminary that is its own organization that is putting content out there in the world through our online platform to equip leaders and everyday disciples to grow in faith and to practice faithful innovation. Because one of the big things that we're trying to do at Luther is to equip Christian public leaders to lead into the ever-changing future, right? The church of your grandparents is no longer. And to be a Christian public leader, whether you're a pastor, a deacon, nonprofit leader, whatever you're doing, we need to learn how to navigate and learn adaptive change in an ever-changing world. And so Faith Lead is all about that. So I create content for that, and I specifically work with content for the everyday disciple. So like if you go on to be a pastor and you're looking for, hey, what kind of studies can I promote to my congregation or point to my congregation to? Take my classes at Faith Lead Academy. Things like I do courses on Bible study, Matthew, I'm working on the book of Acts right now, and I'm doing a whole string of courses on spiritual formation called Overflow, How to Grow in Faith. So that's what I do at Luther. Well, to be quite honest, I have not seen either. But to hear the vibe, and I'm a big movie buff, so it's interesting that I haven't seen either. But I'm kind of resisting the hype. But I would have to say that I would probably lean more towards Barbie as far as my love of movies. While I think Oppenheimer, it's like Schindler's List. I don't want to watch it. And like Saving Private Ryan, I'm glad I watched it, but I won't ever watch it again. You know, Oppenheimer's probably one of those kinds of movies. Oh, wow. What a great question. So I started seminary back in 1994. What inspired me to start seminary is that my entire life I have had a passion for learning and teaching. I've always wanted to be a teacher, and not like a public school teacher kind of teacher, but a seminary teacher, teaching people how to grow deeper in the love of God through studying scripture, through studying theology, spiritual formation, and knowing that to be a college professor, you have to get a PhD. You have to first get a master's degree. But so here's the truth. I didn't necessarily feel called to be a pastor completely. Here's the bigger thing. My whole life, I've had two passions: art and Bible theology, that whole world. And those things have sometimes fought against each other in my life, and other times worked beautifully together, like they are right now. So being a pastor was one of the options when I was leaving high school and in college. But so was being an animated film director, and so was being a Bible translator, and so was being a college professor, right? So all of these things have always been part of who I am. And so I knew that getting a Master's of Divinity was something that would serve any of those passions. But because I lived in Las Vegas in 1994, there was not a seminary in Las Vegas, and the church that I was in at that time, I did not want to leave because I was already deeply embedded in leadership there, and it was a growing, dynamic mega church. And so I was looking for a seminary where I could do distance learning, but that was fully accredited. And at that time, in 1994, Bethel Seminary here in the Twin Cities was like the only one that had a fully accredited distance program. But in order to be enrolled in that program, I had to be serving on staff at a church. And so that's how I entered into ministry. So when I entered into seminary so that I could go on to get a PhD someday, maybe. But I also became a pastor while I was doing it. Interesting, right? Oh, the one thing I would tell my younger self is don't quit. Because I actually dropped out of seminary because I didn't think I needed it because of the church I was in. And that ended up being a big mistake. I very quickly re-entered, but I got out of sequence and it took me a little longer to finish, and just stay the course. Outside the classroom, oh man, come to lunch church, show up to community activities as much as possible because I try to be present during the school year, make appointments. For me, I have office hours on my Google Calendar that you don't even have to ask. If you see it, you can just book it, and it can either be in person or on Zoom. And let's just have coffee. Don't be afraid to reach out and just say, hey, I'd like to get to know you. Let's have coffee or something. And then to get to know me outside of all of that in the social media realm, I'm very present in social media. So you can hang out with me on my live stream Zoom calls, or you can join my network or whatever. I've been reading a lot of books recently, which may sound weird, but it's actually unusual for me because when I was a pastor, I didn't read as much as I would like to. So anyway, a book I just finished listening to Fellowship of the Ring. 18 hours audible. A lot of driving. Good thing I drove to Fargo recently. So as far as fiction goes, I haven't read that book since the late 80s and watched the movies when they first came out, but I just read that, so classic. But as far as ministry related books, I just read a really interesting book called Lived Spiritual Praxis by Eric J. Kyle. And it's a really good book on bringing some pretty heady theory about spirituality. He kind of taps into process theology and things, but then he brings it into the nuts and bolts of actual contextual ministry. And I think he does a good job theoretically of bridging the gap between those two things. That's been a very recent one. You're Welcome from Moana. I find myself singing that song a lot because, The Rock, who doesn't love Maui, right? So I'm a big Pixar, Disney animation fan in general. So favorite thing in the Twin Cities? Oh man. So I will confess, I am a suburbanite through and through. Born, raised, live, suburban reality. Even did my dissertation on spiritual formation in the suburban congregation, right? So I'm a very suburban guy. And we have great suburbs in the Twin Cities. I live in the South Metro, and we have this place called Lebanon Hills. Lebanon Hills is amazing. It is this massive park that you can get lost in the woods and hike, and it's the closest I've felt to being in the Colorado Rockies in the flatlands of Minnesota that I've ever gotten to. Because there's enough elevation and enough tree cover that in a particular place in Lebanon Hills, I can imagine, I'm in the mountains, even though I know I'm not. But if you're not a outdoorsy, suburban-y person, the Twin Cities, the urban vibe here is amazing. Great food, great art, lots of stuff to do. But there's there's really something for everybody in the Twin Cities, I think. So I'm actually not teaching this fall because of my half and half contract. This fall I'm focusing most of my energy toward my Faith Lead classes. So those courses coming out on Faith Lead Academy next year, one, I'm doing the Book of Acts. And the cool thing about that is I'm an illustrator animator. And so I use my illustration and animation skills to build those online courses. And so I'm actually, right now, I'm illustrating the Book of Acts as a graphic novel. And that's part of my work. And then those images and all of that content will become the basis of my Book of Acts class. So when you take the Acts class next year when it comes out, you'll actually be following the story through my graphic novel, which is really fun. And then the other class I'm teaching, or that I'm building, is the second part of the Overflow course. See, in the Overflow course, I introduced spiritual formation. It's built around the idea of loving God with our mind, spirit, body. And the love of God overflows to our comfortable neighbor and our uncomfortable neighbor. Right? That's kind of the model. And then I'm building a course around each of those 5 components. So the course I'm working on right now is loving God with our mind. How to be a lifelong learner, how to study the Bible. Basically, I could say this to potential seminarians, it's basically hermeneutics for the everyday disciple. How to interpret well in all of life. So those are what I'm working on for Faith Lead Academy. The course that I hope you all as students will take is a winter course called Cultivating Spirituality, Vocation, and Mission in Adults. So the course is going to have 2 lenses. The first is, how do we, as individual Christian public leaders, cultivate space in our own life to listen to God and discern, what is God actually calling me to do, right? And then how do we as leaders cultivate spaces so that the people we've been called to serve can hear God's voice and discern what God is calling them to do, right? So spirituality, listening, vocation, God is actually calling, and then God is calling us to do in mission. So that's what that course is going to be all about. Super practical, helpful, hopefully. So my wife and I have been married. I've been married 34 years, and we just really enjoy watching television together, actually. At the end of the day, like 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, we watch a show, and now we have streaming services. We just watch one show and watch it until we watch through the whole thing, and that's just kind of our chill time. But as far as like activities and things, I just love art so much that even in my free time, I paint. I always have an oil painting going. I go out and do plein air painting as much as possible, part of a figure drawing co-op. So my show and tell is this. I brought, so for the past 4 years, starting in 2019, I've illustrated each of the Gospels as a graphic novel. So I've got Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and it is illustrated. It's the story of the gospel as a graphic novel. And think of it this way, it's like a visual Cliff's Notes of the entire gospel. So I don't skip any passages, but it's not word for word. Like, you're not going to read every word of the gospel, but you are going to visually walk through every part of the gospel in each one of these. And so these are in print, but they're also all available at cartoonistbible.com for free. So you can see every one of these pages, flip through them on the website, and then tons and tons of resources to download and use. And the cool thing about this is that each one of these panels, each one of these entire books, I've also put into a PowerPoint and an image pack. So like if you wanted to use this to teach the whole book or any section of it, you can just use these images and the panel will show up, and then each word balloon will show up separately, and you can visually walk through the story using these resources. And so that's like my personal pet project that's been going on for years and years, which is part of the other reason why I'm doing the Book of Acts right now. But these each have like 24 pages in them, but my Book of Acts has 43 pages. So it's going to be a much more detailed visual telling of the story. I'm super excited. So my word of blessing and encouragement to you is, fear not. And my encouragement to you is to not think about this experience as an academic experience, but as a spiritual experience. You are coming here to be formed to be pastors or Christian public leaders of some kind or another. Unless you know that you want to go on and get a PhD and be a professor, that's a different matter altogether. But if you're coming here to be trained and formed as a Christian public leader, don't forget that. Use your study as a spiritual practice, and don't neglect your own spiritual life, your own time with God in prayer, in Bible study, in contemplation, community involvement. It's very easy to get distracted by grades and by the pressure of writing papers and all that stuff. So my encouragement and blessing to you is, be a child of God and understand that your study is a step in your growth.